All right, 2 Kings 3, let's call this one Fugitive the Father, which is what we're going to use as the title or theme throughout the week, because this is going to mark a set of chapters that is going to emphasize what we saw in the first couple of chapters of 2 Kings, where it was essentially enough running and enough shame. And it was a point at which God was going to mark a shift, at least for this era of prophets, Elisha being probably the most noteworthy among them. And so he is going to see a period of time where, as Elijah's understudy, he might have spent a lot of time wandering with Elijah, similar to what you might see out of a fugitive. But in this period of time, he is going to be considered like a father, not only by the kings of Israel, but by some of the kings of Syria before we get out of this next set of 7 chapters. And this chapter is going to give us a chance to look at Elisha through the lens of 3 kings who are wandering off to war, led by, surprise, surprise, the king of Israel, who once again is going to go to Jehoshaphat to be like, you want to go to war with me? This time, Jehoshaphat's dealing with Ahab's son, not Ahaziah, because he is already passed on by now, but his brother Jehoram, who is going to take over as king of Israel because Ahaziah had no heir. And so now that Ahab is gone, Moab is going to rebel against Israel, and he is going to want to get them back in line. But he's not going to be confident enough to do it on his own. So he's going to go get his dad's old friend, Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and they are going to travel off to war with also the king of Edom, who seems to still be in subjection to Judah at this time. But what they're not going to do is check with the prophet ahead of time, which actually seems to be the healthier approach when the kings of Israel and Judah are on point and handling business. But we're going to see that they're not so much doing that now, because they're going to spend 7 days wandering in the wilderness until they are out of water and out of options for how to get it, which is going to drive them back to where they need to be, which is consulting the prophets. And one of the members of their party is going to realize that Elisha is actually not far away. And conveniently enough, they are finally going to get the bright idea to go and consult him. And so as they go to Elisha to seek his counsel, his first response is going to be, I wouldn't talk to you if Jehoshaphat wasn't with you. Why don't you go check with the prophets of your father and Jezebel, since those are the prophets you seem to prefer consulting. But Jehoram is going to say, no, this seems to be from God. And thus that's going to seem to be the reason why he's going to be okay consulting Elisha this time. And after Elisha gives him a little bit of grief, he is going to give them their prophecy. And it's not going to be as morbid as the ones he would have for Ahab. This time he's going to say, even though you are struggling to find water, it's a small thing with God, and he is going to provide it for you. And he's not only going to provide you provision, he is going to provide you victory over the Moabites. And so you are going to win. You are going to have provision, and the water that actually relieves their army is actually going to deceive the Moabites, because it is going to give a reddish appearance to their army, and they're going to believe it's actually the blood of these 3 kings whose armies have actually turned on one another. And so they're going to rush down thinking that they're going to collect spoil, when really the Israelites are fully prepared for battle with, of course, the armies of Judah and Edom. And so they are going to rout the Moabites just as Elisha has told them. And so in this story, one of the things that caught my attention first is, one, this is not where Israel is supposed to be. And so later on, we're going to hear one of the prophets say, consider your ways. Are you really supposed to be in a situation where your armies are wandering around in the wilderness, simply struggling to get a drink of water, trying to rein in nations that God had previously put under you? Or is that in some way an indication that you could simply be doing better? And at some point, is the comfort of the status quo worth consistently living beneath your potential? But for Jehoshaphat, living beneath his potential was not necessarily the norm. He was one of Judah's better kings historically. However, once he relaxed his boundaries again and began to offer blind loyalty to the kings of Israel, he wasn't raising their level. He was basically partnering in their failure. And his army was just as thirsty as theirs as they wandered in the wilderness, until he got back to standards, seeking the counsel of Elisha, the man who we said during this set of 7 chapters we'll see actually become a father to the kings of both Israel and Syria. As we look to the next chapter, and we get an opportunity to see how Elisha was living at his potential, and in doing so, even though these individuals who, no matter what they were doing, were struggling to find things as basic as water, Elisha, on the other hand, was taking things as basic as a stick, some flour, and some salt, and turning them into huge solutions.